Hola a todos, bienvenidos. In this video I'm going to share tips on speaking with the Nicaraguan accent and how to speak Spanish like a native Nicaraguan. I'm not a native Spanish speaker, but I have been told that my Spanish accent is very good. I learned Spanish first in school and then by visiting Nicaragua and actually speaking with my husband every single day. And you can watch my full journey here if you haven't seen that yet. I do need to make an updated video, that was a while ago. But I've been to Nicaragua many times and I've spent a lot of time there, so I feel like I have a pretty good handle on the accent without actually being a native. So of course, since I do speak Spanish as my second language and not my first, it's not my native language, it's not going to be perfect, but it will be pretty close, and then maybe later on we can do a reaction video with Tomas actually in the video reacting to this video to see how good he thinks I did. Soy Darlene, aka Darz. Here you'll learn Spanish all about Nicaragua and how and why to stretch your comfort zone. If you're interested in this type of content, consider subscribing and let's get into the video. Let's break this video into two different parts because part of speaking a language like the native speakers speak it is pronunciation, but the other part is what kinds of words you use and how and what tone you use when you speak. Does that make any sense? If it doesn't, I'll get there in a minute. The S is a strange character in Nicaraguan Spanish because a lot of times on the end of a word, if there's an S, it is completely skipped over. For example, from Spanish school, I learned to say ¿Qué es eso? But a Nicaraguan would say ¿Qué eso? It's like they're skipping the word es completely and just saying ¿Qué eso? A couple other examples would be gracias, usually it's gracias, and then después is usually pronounced like después. Another thing about the S is when it is in the middle of a word, like the word escuchar, which means to hear or listen. And I believe there's other countries that like more so do that and say like escuchar and they completely miss the S. And then another example would be like I'm saying or estoy diciendo. I would say as a Nica, an honorary Nica, estoy diciendo. It's hard to like say the example when I'm just like giving an example because then I want to enunciate and everything. They don't really enunciate the S. The other thing about the S is sometimes like this word dijiste. It means you said or you told, and that is how you write it, dijiste. But the Nicas like to add an S on the end of some of these words that are the past tense, like dijistes. And this isn't 100% of the time, and it's not like every verb or every time they say something in the past tense in that way, but it's a thing. It's a thing. It'll even be sometimes written like that when they are writing texts or messages, you know. Another very important thing for Spanish in general, but of course if you want to sound like more like a native, you need to pronounce the vowels correctly.
I'm not throwing shade on anybody. I'm not saying it's bad if you pronounce words a little bit differently or anything, but I'm just helping you understand that.
The A is always an A sound. Vaca. E is always A. Eso. I is always I. Dijiste or dijistes. O is always O. Hola. And U is always U. Estuve. I hear a lot of times people saying the E in Spanish like like eso, but just remember it's a longer A sound. Eso. I believe this is true for any language, but definitely in Spanish and specifically Nicaraguan Spanish, the words are slurred together so much. Like I said, how they cut off the S's in it and they might say que eso instead of que es eso. I'll try to just say something kind of off the cuff right here to just let you get an idea of how I slur words together for Nicaraguan Spanish, but I'm sure it's much more so. Maybe I can find a clip of Tomas speaking Spanish at some point where he was just no sé ni qué está diciendo en ese punto porque ya no sé, yo no sé.
Empecé a trabajar a la edad de 11 años.
Así. That I've heard very much difference in beginner Spanish speakers and native Spanish speakers is, well, the first is D. When you say the word nada, which means nothing, a lot of times the D is actually like disappeared as well, kind of like the S, so they might say na or terminada or todo. But then also when you do hear the D, it's not a D sound. It's more with the tongue between the teeth, kind of like a th sound. Cuando, nada, madera. They stick their tongue kind of out when they say the D. At least that's what I figured out to match the sound that they make. That's what I do. Also, of course, the R, which so many of us struggle with, especially if we're English speakers, because rolling the R is not something we have to do in English. This is still something I fight with whenever I'm speaking Spanish. Of course, you're completely understandable even if you don't roll the R's. What's going on? So for example, the word quiero, which means I want, the R comes out decent, I believe. When it comes to things like dog and car, oh my goodness. Dog is perro and car is carro. I know the Spanish speakers out there are like, no! I know I'm not great at saying the double R, but you really gotta roll it, and it just, there's a certain sound about it that it's just different than what sound I can make. So another letter is the T. The T is not an enunciated T sound. In Spanish, it's more like a DTH maybe. When I was first speaking Spanish, I probably said esto. Can you hear this difference? Esto, esto. Esto, esto. It's just a subtle difference, but there's just that little bit of like a softer T sound, I guess. And then the V/the B is pretty much interchangeable. For example, the word vaca, which means cow, it's not like vaca, like how we say the V in English. It's more vaca, like a B. And then with the letter B, for an example, blanco, which means white. Again, can you hear the difference? Blanco, blanco. Blanco, blanco. It's just more of a VB mixture type of sound, not a complete hard B. And then letters with V is not a complete like V, that very vibrating V sound. Before I move on to the second part of this video of like different things about the language specifically and less about pronunciation, please let me know if you are a native Spanish speaker. Comment down below if I'm saying things right, if there's a better way to explain things, if you have any advice for any English speakers who are learning Spanish or anybody who wants to sound more like a native Nicaraguan, please let us know. All right, so more language type of things. The hugest thing you could ever do to make yourself sound more native to Nicaragua is to use the slang words that they use. And check out the videos I have here. There's actually a part 1 and part 2 because there's just so many. But I did do a couple videos with Tomas on Nicaraguan slang words. So that probably will be the biggest factor in if you're listening to somebody speak in Spanish, you can figure out that they're from Nicaragua based on the slang they use. But beyond that, one of the things they've used quite a bit is vos sos. And see, I just did that vibrating V because I was enunciating vos sos, but really it's like vos sos, more like a B sound. And I think in a lot of other Spanish-speaking countries, they use tú eres instead of vos sos. But if you hear a lot of vos and sos, sometimes together, sometimes not together, that's definitely something the Nicaraguans use quite a bit. Nicaraguans are asking questions, and again, this could be in other Spanish-speaking countries as well, but I've definitely noticed it in Nicaragua. You have your tone go down at the end of a question. So instead of saying, ¿Qué estás haciendo? What are you doing? It would be, ¿Qué estás haciendo? So a lot of times when I'm being asked a question that can also be a statement, I have trouble knowing whether it is a statement or a question. My family has told me that when I'm speaking to Tomas in Spanish, it sounds like we're always fighting or angry at each other. Because the tones of our Spanish are just so like low and flat and like downhill, not not like light and airy and, oh, what do you want to do today? I hope this makes sense. I don't know. Okay. The last thing that I could come up with that makes a Spanish speaker sound like a Nicaraguan is the use of ito and ita at the end of words, which is like diminutivo. And I know for sure this is used in other Spanish-speaking countries, but the thing is, I feel like Nicaraguans use it like excessively. Like they'll use it for anything and everything. So of course, in any Spanish-speaking country, and this might be similar for English too, where if we have a kid named Tom, When they're small, we might call him Tommy. Add the extra part on the end just to make it like more loving and small. And Tomas, when he was younger, was called Tomasito, which is pretty normal, I think, to add that on the end of a name. But then you have things like, I'm gonna put on my hat, or me voy a poner el gorro. There's that double R that I struggle with. The Nicaraguans will say, me voy a poner el gorrito, which again might be pretty normal across countries, but it is used so often. If you ask somebody, can you get me some water, you might say, instead of agua, you would say agüita. Even if it doesn't mean you want less water or a little bit, it's kind of more used as a form of like being sweeter or nicer maybe. Sorry for the background noise, what do you do? They'll also add this diminutive form on the end of words that are already inherently small, like pequeño means small, and they'll say pequeñito, and chiquito means like really small, and so they'll say chiquitito. I think it's really fascinating seeing the differences in languages and accents. I thoroughly enjoy listening to all different types of accents in different languages. I put her on there, I put her on there. And it's been fun for me learning to recognize where different accents are from. Let me know in the comments down below where your accent is from. My accent is from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Anyway, gracias por ver. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. Give it a thumbs up, comment down below, subscribe for more, and we'll see you next time. Tuesday, Saturday. Bye.
Oh, hello.
Escuchar, escuchar, escuchar. Quiero escuchar música. Quiero escuchar música. This is gonna be hard to put subtitles on this video, okay. My family has told me that when I'm speaking to Spanish, diminutive, blah, blah, blah.